Chosen one. There is a scroll in heaven with your name on it, and tonight that scroll has been opened. Heaven is not responding to a crowd right now. It is responding to you. Everything around you may seem ordinary. The sky hasn't split. The room hasn't shaken. And yet in the spirit, something irreversible has just begun. There is a movement in the unseen realm, a divine shift, a transfer, and only the ones who have been tested in silence will even recognize it. Welcome to Chosen One Sanctuary, where we speak not to the masses, but to those who have been marked. If you are hearing this, you already know you're different. You've walked through fires others didn't even smell. You've carried burdens no one could see. And through it all, something in you refused to break. There's a reason, because you were never built for survival. You were designed for rulership. Tonight, we reveal the mystery of the 1%, not in status or wealth by the world's standards, but in heaven's scrolls. The rare souls chosen not only to endure, but to be entrusted. Entrusted with glory. Entrusted with influence. Entrusted with billions, not for vanity, but for divine impact. This is not a prosperity fable. It is the fulfillment of a kingdom prophecy echoed since Proverbs 13:22. The wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. That transfer has already begun. And now, heaven is searching for the stewards. What if everything you lost was training for everything you're about to hold? What if the silence was actually divine protection? Because what's about to be released through you couldn't afford to be corrupted too early. Stay with me until the end, because this isn't just another word. It's a divine summons. By the time we're done, you will not only understand the cost of being chosen, you'll feel the fire of your commissioning. And the question you've been asking in secret, why me, will finally meet its answer. Let's begin. You were born with evidence in your bloodline, chosen one. There are echoes inside you that did not begin with you. Before you ever uttered your first prayer, the heavens were watching your bloodline. The battles you faced were not merely personal. They were ancient. They were prophetic. You were born into a lineage stained with unfinished assignments, spiritual patterns, and generational pain. But within you is the evidence of a different outcome. You are the hinge in your family story, the one through whom the curse breaks and the covenant begins. You were not born to repeat history. You were born to redeem it. Many before you carried promise, but not the endurance. Some had vision, but not the discipline. Others were anointed, but compromised. But you, God marked you to finish what they could not. Your sleepless nights were not just emotional cycles. They were intercessions for those who never had a voice. Your resistance to patterns that others embraced was not stubbornness. It was spiritual preservation. When others in your family chose comfort, you were chosen for consecration. This is why the opposition felt generational, because it was. What you fought was never just about you. It was the residue of altars you did not build, but were called to tear down. In Judges chapter 6, Gideon was told to destroy the altar of Baal his father had built. Before he could lead Israel, he had to confront what was inherited. The same is true of you. You were not just sent to break through. You were sent to break off. To dismantle spiritual legacies that have blocked blessings for decades. And hear this, because you have resisted what others bowed to, heaven has recorded your name in a different book. Your warfare has been weighty because your assignment carries the power of reversal. You are the divine interruption your family never saw coming. And the pain you carry is the proof that heaven has trusted you with what the bloodline could not complete. The enemy always studies patterns, and when he saw you begin to choose righteousness in places where others chose rebellion, he realized something new was being birthed. A mantle had shifted, the scroll had turned, and the one who would carry glory into the next generation had arrived. But with that mantle came isolation, for the ones called to shift bloodlines are rarely celebrated by the ones still trapped in them. They misunderstood your boundaries. They mocked your silence. They questioned your resistance to familiar dysfunction. But the truth is, you were not being difficult. You were being delivered. And now, the same bloodline that once bound you will become the riverbed through which heaven pours legacy, wealth, healing, and spiritual inheritance. What they carried in fragments, you will carry in fullness. Because while others inherited patterns, you were chosen to birth purpose. Hell fought you early, because it saw the transfer before you did. There is a reason your battles came before your understanding. Before you knew your name in the Spirit, the enemy did. Hell does not wait for you to recognize your calling before it attacks. It strikes early, hoping to plant seeds of confusion that choke destiny before it matures. And so, your childhood bore weight your language could not explain. Rejection found you in rooms that should have offered safety. Isolation became your shadow long before you chose solitude. And the ache of not belonging followed you like a scent only spirits could trace. This was not a coincidence. It was a strategy. Before David ever saw a throne, he was left in the field, overlooked, uninvited, anointed in private, but ignored in public. Because those with the oil are often kept out of rooms where the counterfeit is still in power. And just like David, your early years carried a mystery you couldn't name. You had dreams too vivid, sensitivity too sharp, a moral compass that cut through lies others embraced. The enemy saw this, and because he could not stop your calling, he targeted your clarity. If he could not take your crown, he would try to take your confidence. And so, the battles intensified. Fear wrapped itself around your potential. Trauma laced your memory with doubt. Every heartbreak was crafted to echo one lie: you are not worthy. But heaven never agreed with that verdict, because even while broken, you were chosen. Even while confused, you were covered. The truth is, your attacks were not random. They were reactive. Hell reacted to the scroll that was sealed with your name. It trembled at the wealth you were born to release. Not just financial, but spiritual, prophetic, generational. When you were 5, it tried to fracture your trust. At 10, it tried to shut down your voice. At 15, it sent people to mock your sensitivity. Why? Because the darkness saw what you would one day carry into the light. But the attacks didn't work. They made you stronger, more watchful, more discerning. You learned to pray before you understood the power of prayer. You learned to guard your space before you knew what was invading it. You learned to stand alone before you knew you were never alone. Now, the very strength you carry is built from the bricks that were thrown to break you. And the transfer the enemy feared, it's already in motion. That's why the attacks have grown quieter, but sharper. That's why you felt resistance in rooms you haven't even entered yet. Because hell always senses when heaven is preparing to elevate a chosen one. But hear this: your resistance is prophetic proof that your reward is near. The pain is not a delay. It is a signal. And every demon that mocked your process will now witness your positioning. because the transfer doesn't wait for applause. It waits for alignment. So ask yourself this, chosen one, if hell saw your crown before you did, what might heaven be waiting to reveal next? Let that question echo as we enter deeper into what this billion-fold mantle truly means. The billion-fold blessing is not monetary, it's missional. Chosen one, the weight you feel is not about wealth, it is about responsibility. You were never meant to be a reservoir, you were meant to be a river. When heaven speaks of releasing billions, it is not referring to currency alone, it is pointing to the capacity of your life to carry answers, influence, and infrastructure for a wounded generation. This is not prosperity gospel. This is prophetic assignment. Because heaven does not fund ego, it funds mission. Scripture is clear. Deuteronomy 8:18 declares, "But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth and so confirms His covenant." Wealth is not random reward. It is covenant confirmation. When God entrusts abundance, He is not rewarding your survival. He is activating your assignment. This is why you've felt the burden long before the blessing. You've had visions of solutions without the resources to build them. Dreams of nations while being pressed in a room too small for your voice. That tension was never a denial. It was preparation. Because the chosen ones are always given a glimpse before they are given a gate. Nehemiah wept over broken walls before he had the timber to rebuild them. Esther fasted for her people before she wore the crown. Joseph had prophetic insight while still imprisoned. They were not entrusted with resources for themselves. They were chosen because heaven needed a vessel who could carry abundance without distortion. And so now, heaven whispers to you, will you carry what others consumed? Will you release what others hoarded? Will you build what others abandoned? The billionaire mantle is not about bank accounts. It is about blueprints. It is about infrastructure. You will not just be funded, you will become the funding. Ideas will flow through you that create schools, shelters, studios, missions, ministries. The influence will follow, but the weight will be heavy. Because the ones trusted with heaven's resources must also carry heaven's rhythm. The moment you begin to think the blessing is about your comfort, you will forfeit the power of your commission. This is why many are gifted, but not trusted, anointed, but unassigned, because they pursued the gold without understanding the goal. Chosen one, the billions are not for your pride, they are for your purpose. You will feed what is starving, fund what is holy, fuel what is righteous. And through you, systems will shake, not because you shouted, but because you obeyed. There is a mission inside you that requires more than good intentions. It requires power, influence, access, and the God who called you is ready to release it, not to celebrate your success, but to confirm your stewardship. This is the hour of release. But heaven is asking, can you hold what I'm about to pour? You passed the test of lack. Now you're ready for overflow. Before God trusts you with overflow, He watches how you respond to lack. Chosen one, you have walked through seasons of subtraction, times when there was not enough money, not enough energy, not enough support. Yet in the midst of that drought, you gave, you served. You prayed not just for yourself, but for others. You didn't stop because you were empty. You kept going because you were faithful. Heaven noticed, the test of lack is not about endurance alone. It is about integrity. What do you do when there's nothing left to prove and no one watching? Do you still sow? Do you still praise? Do you still trust? The widow with 2 coins gave more than the rich because her giving came from sacrifice, not surplus. And you too have been giving in the dark. Giving when it didn't make sense. Giving when others mocked your faith. That kind of obedience becomes a key. It unlocks overflow. You see, overflow is not earned. It's proven. God doesn't pour more into cracked vessels. He pours more into vessels that held their shape under pressure. Vessels that didn't shatter when their name was forgotten, when the door was closed, when the support dried up. The reason the transfer is coming to you, and not to them, is because you passed the test they refused to take. You remained honorable when dishonor would have been easier. You remained generous when stinginess felt safer. You refused to beg because something inside you knew. Lack is not your identity. It was your training ground. And now, the gates are opening. But beware. Many will want the overflow without surviving the drought. They will mimic your fruit, but not your root. They will claim your reward, but not your resistance. That's why the blessing must be undeniable. Heaven is not releasing a trickle. It is releasing a torrent because you proved yourself faithful in famine. Chosen one, get ready. The very places that once mocked your lack will witness your abundance. The same people who questioned your survival will soon ask for your strategy. But you must never forget the floor you wept on, the nights you cried and still chose worship, the hunger that taught you discipline. Let your overflow be drenched in remembrance, because the test was never just about resources. It was about proving that you could carry responsibility without pride. And now, because you passed with silence and with tears, heaven is pouring with power and with fire. The overflow is not coming. It has already begun. Spiritual wealth transfer is already in motion. Are you aligned? Chosen one, there is a shift taking place that is invisible to natural eyes, but undeniable in the spirit. The world calls it coincidence. The faithful call it prophecy. But you, if your spirit is awake, you already feel it. The transfer has begun. We are living in the fulfillment of Proverbs 13:22, where it is written, "The wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous." This is not poetic metaphor. It is divine economics. Heaven is not merely releasing resources. It is redirecting ownership. Kingdom influence is moving. Power is changing hands. And this shift is not based on hustle. It is based on holiness. But here is the mystery. The transfer is quiet. It does not arrive with fireworks. It comes disguised as opportunity, as divine blueprints, as sudden favor with no logical explanation. And only those who are aligned will recognize it when it knocks. Alignment is not about perfection. It is about positioning. It means your heart has remained pure, your hands stayed open, your eyes fixed on heaven. You cannot receive what you're not aligned to recognize. Heaven is not blessing noise. It is blessing obedience. And those who are in alignment will find themselves in rooms they did not apply for, conversations they did not orchestrate, and promotions they did not predict. Joseph did not rise by networking. He rose by interpretation. Pharaoh's throne room was not the reward of ambition. It was the result of consistency. He interpreted dreams in a prison, and heaven opened the palace. So too will it be with you. When you remain faithful to what seems small, the doors will open to what is strategic. This is why the distractions have grown louder, why confusion has tried to blur your direction, because the enemy knows if you stay aligned, you will inherit not just blessing, but blueprints. Prophetically, some of you are being handed visions in your sleep, ideas while doing mundane things, impressions that will not let go. Do not dismiss them. Heaven is transferring not just wealth, but wisdom. And if you ignore it, the window may close. Alignment is urgency. Alignment is obedience without delay. It is moving when God whispers, not just when He shouts. It is shifting your schedule to match His calendar. The wealth transfer is not waiting for everyone to be ready. It is finding the few who already are. Chosen one, ask yourself this: if the vault opens tonight, would you be in position to receive it? Are your hands clean? Are your motives pure? Are your steps surrendered? Heaven is not looking for containers. It is looking for conduits. And if you are willing, aligned, and alert, the transfer won't just touch you. It will flow through you like a river that refuses to run dry. The billion-fold mantle brings favor and persecution. To be chosen is to be favored, but to be favored is also to be targeted. Chosen one, the mantle you are called to carry is not only a garment of honor, it is a magnet for opposition. The weight of glory cannot rest on casual shoulders. That is why, even as you ascend, the warfare intensifies. Do not be surprised when the attacks follow your acceleration. They are confirmation, not contradiction. The same David, who was anointed with oil in front of his family, was later hunted by a jealous king. The crown does not erase the conflict, it reveals it. Heaven never gives favor without fire. The billionaire mantle is heavy, not just because of what it grants, but because of what it attracts. It will draw divine connections, yes, but also demonic attention. There are spirits assigned to abort mantles. Spirits that come not to seduce your calling, but to wear it down until you lay it down. This is why purity matters, why discernment is survival. The enemy cannot cancel your scroll, but he will try to delay your crowning. Understand this: the weight of this favor is not simply about wealth, it is about witness. You are being positioned to stand in places where others fall, to speak truth where others compromise, to steward abundance with holiness, while others chase it with hunger. But here's the prophetic charge: if you want the crown, you must carry the thorns. Persecution will rise, not always from strangers, but from familiar voices. The ones who watched you grow, but never understood your anointing. The ones who want your overflow without enduring your oil press. Favor does not just elevate, it exposes. And what it exposes, it purifies. This is why heaven trains you in secret, why the silence came before the spotlight. Because the mantle is not to be worn by the arrogant or the untested. And you, chosen one, have passed through the refining fire. You've stood through betrayal. You've withstood misunderstanding. You've endured delay, not to be punished, but to be proven. Now, the mantle is falling, but if you refuse to acknowledge the cost, you will not carry the power. Luke 12:48 reminds us, "To whom much is given, much will be required." Your elevation will be public, but your endurance must remain private. The applause may come, but your root must be deeper than your reach. So wear the mantle, but don't idolize it. Accept the favor, but don't worship it. And when the persecution comes, do not shrink. Do not explain yourself. Do not water down the anointing to make others comfortable. You are not here to fit in. You are here to fulfill. And the mantle will remind you every step of the way that God did not choose you for ease. He chose you for impact, and impact always comes with cost. Prophetic confirmation. Heaven has endorsed you in silence. Chosen one, the silence you endured was never proof of abandonment. It was the sound of heaven crafting something too holy to announce prematurely. While others heard cheers, you heard nothing. While they were celebrated, you were concealed. And yet, your spirit stayed faithful. This was not punishment. It was endorsement in disguise. There are certain scrolls heaven does not open until the atmosphere is holy enough. You are one of those scrolls, one of those names. And though it felt like delay, it was preservation. Though it felt like rejection, it was redirection. Though it felt like you were forgotten, you were actually being fortified. What man ignored, God was authoring in fire. It is written in 1 Peter 5:10, "After you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast." This verse is not poetic. It is legal. And tonight, it is in effect. The silent season is ending. The endorsement has been stamped, and the crown is nearing. Heaven does not rush what is sacred. The delay was divine insulation. You are not being stalled. You are being studied. While others launched prematurely, you were learning protocols of the palace. While others performed, you were being purged. This is why the silence deepened after your greatest acts of obedience. Because silence is often heaven's final seal before public manifestation. The danger is misinterpreting that silence. Some turn bitter, others grow complacent. But the chosen endure it as a vow. They wear the silence like armor. They move through stillness with trust. That is why you are still here, because something in you refused to abort the promise just because the sky didn't answer. And now, because you did not demand a sign, heaven is giving you a confirmation. Watch how the doors open without warning. Watch how people you never reached out to begin reaching for you. Watch how resources appear from places your logic never anticipated. These are not coincidences. They are evidence. Heaven is not just speaking, it is revealing. But hear this. If you mistake this moment for coincidence, you will mishandle the confirmation. Prophetic confirmation is sacred. It means you must move. It means what heaven whispered in shadows is about to echo through systems. It is the sign that your waiting is over and your warfare is shifting. No longer defense, now dominion. So receive the silence as a badge, not of survival, but of selection. Because what's coming next requires the kind of trust that only silence could forge. The 1% must move differently. Kingdom billionaires are built in obscurity. Not everyone can carry what you're called to release. And not everyone is supposed to understand how you've been trained. The 1% are not fashioned in the spotlight. They are forged in obscurity. Chosen one, your hidden years were not wasted. They were weaponized. While others chased visibility, you were being refined in invisibility. And what they see now is only the echo of what heaven has already established. You are part of a rare remnant, those who can be trusted with influence because they no longer crave attention. Those who have been weaned off applause, shaped in the silence, and taught by the Spirit, not by strategy. Look at John the Baptist. No crown, no palace, just wilderness and fire. And yet, when he spoke, the earth shifted, crowds came, kingdoms trembled. But it was not because of his charisma. It was because of his consecration. This is your pattern. You were not made for fast fame. You were shaped for slow fire. You've been walking paths that no one else saw, bearing burdens that no one else knew. Because heaven does not build billionfold vessels in shallow places. It builds them in the deep. And only those who can stand being misunderstood in the deep are trusted to rise without drowning at the surface. This is why your assignments felt lonely, why your moves confused those around you, why even your victories felt private. You were being built with weight, not for speed. Because what you're about to carry would crush someone who is shaped by compliments, but not by calling. You don't move like the 99%, because the mantle resting on you is not for maintenance. It is for multiplication. You are called to shift systems, to influence nations, to finance missions, to rewrite legacies. And for that kind of destiny, you must walk differently, think differently, and most of all, respond differently. This is the season where distractions will increase, not to tempt you into rebellion, but to tempt you into noise. And if you start mimicking the moves of the masses, you will miss the whisper of the mantle. Do not be seduced by visibility. The same God who anointed you in silence will announce you in power. And when he does, it won't look like a launch. It will look like a resurrection. Because billionfold glory does not knock. It breaks doors open. So remain aligned. Remain quiet when others boast. Remain generous when others hoard. Remain pure when others compromise. Because when the vaults of heaven open fully, only the 1% will be ready to carry what cannot be contained. The billionfold. Wealth is also authority to fund kingdom movements. Chosen one. This wealth is not being released to pad your comfort. It is being released to fuel your calling. The currency that is coming to you carries more than financial value. It carries prophetic weight. What heaven is placing in your hands is not merely provision. It is permission. Permission to build, to release, to restore, to reign. You are not just being entrusted with wealth. You are being entrusted with authority. In Nehemiah's day, wealth was not handed to men without mission. The king funded his journey because Nehemiah had a divine blueprint. Likewise, the billions assigned to your name are not for accumulation. They are for activation. God is raising up a generation of builders, not just believers, who will reconstruct what culture has torn down. That includes you. Hospitals will be funded by your obedience. Orphanages built through your overflow. Movements birthed through your intercession and financed through your faith. This is not imagination. It is kingdom infrastructure. And you have been chosen to carry it, not later, but now. But hear this clearly. Resources without revelation become idols. Influence without integrity becomes poison. That's why your wilderness was long. That's why the betrayal happened. That's why the refining would not end. Because God had to break in you what would have broken others through you. You are being called to fund revival, and not just spiritual revival, economic, educational, cultural, and generational. The Lord is raising kingdom economists, spirit-filled innovators, and prophetic financiers who will release solutions, not slogans. And your mantle is among them. But this wealth must flow. It cannot stagnate. It cannot be hoarded. It must move like a river, cleansing, feeding, nourishing. The more you try to keep, the less it multiplies. But the more you release, the more heaven trusts you with. This is why the blessing is being assigned to the faithful few. Because many can sow, few can steward. Chosen one, if you have ever wept for what you could not fund, felt pain when you couldn't help, or dreamed beyond your budget, then heaven has written your name in this moment. The release of billions is not a trend, it is a transfer, and the fingerprints of God are all over it. You will be called to sit in rooms where others once mocked your faith. You will speak with boldness to systems that once silenced your voice. And when you release what heaven gives you, fire will fall, not just in churches, but in culture. This is the reason for the wait. You weren't born to be rich. You were born to rebuild. Warning: if you refuse the mantle, you'll still feel the weight. Without the glory. Chosen one. This is not a gift you can ignore. This is not a calling you can casually delay. The mantle is not a suggestion. It is a summons. And to ignore it is to invite restlessness without reward. There are people walking today with heavy spirits, not because they're under attack, but because they're out of alignment. The calling is still upon them, but they've stopped responding. They turned away from the weight, thinking it would go away. But the truth is, the mantle doesn't leave. It lingers, it follows, it presses, it whispers. And for those who refuse it, that same mantle becomes a burden instead of a banner. Jonah ran from his assignment, but the storm found him. The sea did not rise against him because of rebellion, but because of reluctance. When you are chosen, delay is disobedience, and disobedience attracts divine correction. This is why your rest has been unsettled. Why every normal path you tried to follow felt hollow. Why no matter how much you try to blend in, something always exposes you. You can't be like everyone else. You weren't wired for comfort. You were born for commission. If you reject the mantle, the weight won't lift. It will only grow heavier, and you will find yourself haunted by purpose. Dreams will carry fragments of prophecy. Conversations will echo with reminders, and your heart will ache, not from wounds, but from silence, because nothing torments the chosen like ignoring their call. So take this as your final warning and your divine invitation. The mantle is here. The assignment is open. The scroll is turned to your name. Heaven will not force you, but if you walk away, you will carry the memory of what could have been, the ache of a crown unclaimed, the sorrow of an inheritance unspent. You must choose. Say yes and walk in glory. Say no and live beneath it. But know this, chosen one, the weight will not disappear. It will only wait until your spirit surrenders. And that surrender, when it comes, will become the moment all of heaven moves, because the mantle cannot rest on anyone else. It was tailored for you, and it will wait for your answer. And when your yes finally rises, not from pressure, but from purity, the heavens will respond, not with noise, but with movement. Quiet, holy, unstoppable movement. Because this mantle wasn't made for someone else. It was made for you. And now, its weight is resting where it was always meant to be. Chosen one, when God marks a soul for impact, the world rarely sees it coming. The mantle descends in silence. The scroll is opened without applause, and those who carry heaven's weight often do so with trembling hands long before the crown is ever visible. Yet still, they carry it. Still, they rise. You are among them. This entire unfolding, from wilderness to wealth, from silence to commissioning, has never been about material gain. It has always been about trust. God doesn't place glory on the strong. He places it on the surrendered. And now, as you stand in this moment of holy tension, the Spirit is asking not whether you are capable, but whether you are available. Because what is being transferred in this hour cannot be measured by currency. It is measured by consequence. Nations are waiting for what you carry. Generations are starving for what you've been called to release. And the question that now lingers in the atmosphere is simple but eternal. Will you walk in it? Remember, Moses was reluctant. Esther was hidden. Joseph was misunderstood. And yet, they responded. Not because they felt ready, but because God had already gone before them. So has He gone before you? And if you felt the weight pressing on your chest as this word unfolded, if your spirit trembled in quiet agreement, then know this: you are the remnant. You are the river. You are the one. This is your prophetic seal. I am the 1%. I am trusted with the transfer. I carry kingdom fire, and I will not shrink. If that resonates with you, if you know this mantle was made for your shoulders, then honor what was revealed tonight. Like this message, not just to show support, but to mark your agreement with the word. Share it with someone whose spirit is stirring, but hasn't found language for it yet. Subscribe so you remain connected to this sanctuary of prophetic release. And finally, let your voice be heard. Comment below with what the Spirit revealed to you, or ask the question that's been burning in your heart. This is not just a video. It is a conversation between heaven and earth, and we are listening. Until next time, stay grounded, stay aligned. This is Chosen One Sanctuary, where the mantle meets the mission.